Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bull Take Scouting Podcast. It is such an exciting week for football fans because after the long wait since February, we are about to have competitive NFL football. The preseason's over, and we have an amazing Thursday night matchup coming up in just 2 days. Bills versus Rams, to take off the NFL season. And right now, we're going to really get into previewing the rookie class and how we think they're going to perform, who's going to surprise, who's going to disappoint, when are the quarterbacks going to play, if they are at all going to play in their rookie seasons. But we're going to start off by giving our picks for offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Alex, I'll let you take it away. Who is your pick for a pretty wide open offensive rookie of the year position?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as wide open as I can remember. There's no obvious pick. There's no obvious. Normally, you go with a top picked quarterback. Kenny Pickett was just announced today that he's not the starter. Mitch Trubisky is for the Steelers. So there goes that obvious pick. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker, the running back for Seattle.
Wow.
And so I've been back and forth between a few names. And my reasoning for Walker is I just feel like he's a much better running back than Rashad Penny is. I know Penny might be maybe the day one starter, with Walker still recovering from his hernia. I don't think that's going to last him into the season too much. And I think the Seahawks are really going to run the ball. I mean, they have Geno Smith as their starting quarterback. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. He was my running back one throughout the entire draft process. I loved him as a player. So in a season where it doesn't seem so obvious looking at everything, I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, my surprise was not at the talent because I also had him as my running back one. I think he is such an explosive, big play running back. It's my surprise is because he's currently not slated to be the starter, and Rashad Penny is currently the starter in Seattle and was really, really impressive in the back half, really back third of the season, where I know that Penny has, not been available for much of his career, or he hasn't played very well, but those 5-6 weeks at the end of the season, he was legitimately one of the best running backs in football, which is why I think that he's really going to get his shot to replicate that. And it's very much possible he gets injured again, because that has happened quite a bit in his career. Maybe that ends up opening the path for Walker, or Walker wins the job outright within a few weeks. But I think that Penny is a significant obstacle to Walker, and it's being reflected. And I know we've never talked about betting on here, but I just looked at the odds for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Walker is at plus 2,500, which puts him at 17th in the Offensive Rookie of the Year odds. So that is quite the bold take from Alex there.
I mean, what can I say? It's in the name, Bull Take Scouting.
Yeah.
So who's your Offensive Rookie of the Year pick?
I'm going to go with a different running back. I'm going with Breece Hall for the New York Jets. I think that can get Jets fans really excited. That it's been, I don't even really know when was the last time a Jets rookie won this award, but
never.
Okay, well there you go. Never. I really think it could be Hall this year. He's going to be the starter. I like Michael Carter a lot, but I like him as a 1B, like a change of pace back. That's what he was at UNC with Javonte Williams, and I think the Jets are going to really replicate that duo that UNC had in their backfield, and Hall is going to get the bulk of the carries. He's going to get goal line carries, which help in terms of, statistics matter for this award. And I think he's going to get a good deal of touchdowns because of that. And he's such a well-rounded running back who I think is really pro ready. And we've often seen running backs shine in the first couple of years of their careers, and I think that's going to happen with Breece Hall because he's a really good receiver out of the backfield. He's got good size, good power, good contact balance, good burst, good vision. There might not be an elite trait, but he checks every box, and that translates to early NFL success at the running back position.
Yeah, he was another one of the three names that I was thinking about. The other guy was Treylon Burks, just because he's our wide receiver one. He was both of our wide receiver one throughout the draft process. He's in a great situation in Tennessee. I know Robert Woods is there. Some of our commenters pointed out on Instagram. I think Robert Woods is only going to help Treylon Burks' situation. I think they're going to utilize him perfectly. And I think, he'll be a top rookie in my opinion as well.
Absolutely. I think that a few of these rookie wide receivers are going to have really good seasons. London comes to mind too, as does Jahan Dotson, Garrett Wilson.
Sure.
I think we both went with running backs because even though they're similar levels of talent, it's just you get a lot bigger of a workload if you get to be the established guy in that running game. Whereas, rookie wide receivers don't usually command a huge target share. There are exceptions, like Jamar Chase last year with his incredible season. But I don't think anyone's quite on that level. But I do think that group is going to have a really good rookie year despite that.
Yeah, I think we can move on to defense, which to me at least has a much more obvious answer. I'll name mine right off the bat. Aiden Hutchinson, to me, I think it's just a perfect situation. I think he's a really big name. He's popular in the media. He's a defensive end, so he's going to rack up sacks. The Lions' defensive line isn't horrible, so he won't be commanding a double team all the time. He'll get one-on-one situations. And obviously, he's a great prospect. He was the number one prospect on our board. So, I think I'm not going to say it's a slam dunk, but I think right now, at least, it's a fairly obvious choice without any games played.
Yeah, I think Hutchinson's going to have a great season. If he hits 10 sacks, I won't be surprised at all. He's pro ready. He's strong. He's got a good variety of pass rush moves. He's athletic. There's a reason why he was our number one player in this draft. But I will say that I actually thought kind of hard about this because I really think Sauce Gardner has a shot to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. I don't think he was even targeted in the preseason, right? And that really follows up on the crazy stat he had at Cincinnati where he never allowed a single touchdown. Sauce Gardner is for real. He was my number 2 player on my big board. He's just, such a lockdown corner that I think he can really be that in his year 1 in the NFL, including against receivers of the caliber of Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill in that league. I'm not saying he's going to, they're not going to do anything against him, but I don't think that they're going to have the performances that they often have on a week-to-week basis when they face Sauce Gardner, and he's going to be doing that as a rookie. And so I think that it's definitely possible. And man, just imagine the offensive and defensive rookie of the years are both Jets.
Yeah, that would be, as a Jets fan, that would be awesome. The one little pushback that I have with Sauce is his dominance early on even might be to a detriment in his rookie of the year odds, because if you think about it, if he's not getting targeted, the voters aren't really going to care about that. The voters are going to want to see interceptions. They're going to want to see sacks, obviously, from a defensive end. They're not going to want to see, he blanketed a receiver and was targeted twice. They don't really care about that. So I think in order for him to become or be named Rookie of the Year, he'll need to have some interceptions. It's very similar to Revis in 2009, 2010. His stat line versus receivers was insane, but he was barely targeted, barely got interceptions. He never won a Defensive Player of the Year, even though I believe he should have. So I think it could be a similar situation with Sauce, but there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be one of the top rookies, offensive and defensive.
That's a good point. I think his popularity would mean that it is really widely known that he's playing that well. But if it comes down to, he's playing incredibly, but so is Hutchinson, and Hutchinson, has put up 12 sacks. You're right. I think that the numbers will really lead to Hutchinson being the pick. So now, do you want to name a few other rookies that you think are gonna impress? And we can get into guys who are a little less obvious, but what other guys who are picked pretty high in the 22 NFL draft do you think are really going to be instant stars?
I think Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, he's our other defensive end that we put on our all rookie team predictions. I think his issues at Oregon were overblown. He's a really, really good player, super athletic. He had that knee injury scare in the preseason. But I think he'll be ready to go. And he could be another guy that's pushing that, 8, 9, 10 sack mark in his rookie season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I'll give you a pair of offensive tackles. One is Charles Cross, who I really liked coming out. I made him my number 2 offensive tackle in my pre-draft rankings. He has played really, really well in the preseason because he's such a clean pass protector, really athletic to seal the edge, good technique, good length. So I think that he's going to be able to really hold the line there. And then I'll also give you Evan Neal, because I think that even though he had some struggles in the preseason, we saw that with Panay Sewell last year. He had a rough preseason and then he had a really solid rookie year. I expect the same from Evan Neal.
We're talking defensive rookie of the year, but that's okay.
Now I asked you what other rookies in general you think are going to be.
I thought we were still talking
No.
defensive rookie of the year.
I asked you what other rookies you think are going to impress.
My bad. Well, another guy in the same vein of defensive rookie of the year, George Karlaftis, the defensive end from Kansas City. I think he's going to have a really productive season. He's been productive in the preseason. I'm pretty sure he's had at least 2 sacks over the past 3 games. I think being on a Chiefs defense that actually is really talented, his name will be, put out there. The Chiefs will be a really good team. He might not be a 10, 12 sack guy, but I think he's going to be really dominant versus the run and the pass. And I just think he's a really, really good all-around player with a really high floor. And even if he's not necessarily getting the stats, he's going to cause a lot of problems, cause a lot of pressures. And I think he'll be, one of those top rookies. I know he's kind of towards the end of the first round, so maybe not super obvious, but I think being on that Chiefs team is only going to help him being next to Chris Jones.
I absolutely agree. Karlaftis was really one of our favorites because you constantly see him in the opponent's backfield. He's got such good power and first step quickness where he gets the advantage so early in the rep, and it's really hard for the offensive tackle to recover.
Another guy that I want to throw out there on defense, Nakobe Dean, the linebacker for Philadelphia. He was the 3rd round pick, fell due to medical concerns. He was one of my top 20 players in the draft. He's a great player all around, super athletic, super quick sideline to sideline speed. I think playing behind a really good defensive line that the Eagles have, including Jordan Davis in the middle, I think that's going to help funnel a lot of tackles to Nakobe Dean's way in the middle of the field. And he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised snag an interception or 2, maybe return a fumble for a touchdown, maybe have some flashy plays due to his athleticism. But again, flashy plays or not, he's a really good all-around linebacker for the Eagles who definitely got a steal with him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, actually, I think he makes those flashy plays because he has such a high football IQ. I think that the picking up a fumble, returning it for a touchdown is a good example because I could totally see him do that, once or twice this season even, because he just knows where to be. It'll look like it's just right place, right time, but it's his instincts that are getting him there. Another guy who I think is a really high IQ football player and who actually was named a starter today, even though he's a 3rd round rookie, is Nick Cross, the safety from Maryland, who's now with the Colts. And I think he's going to have a pretty similar rookie year to his now teammate in the defensive backfield, Julian Blackmon. Blackmon was a day 3 pick. He had a really good rookie year. I thought he was one of the, maybe one of the top 5 rookie defenders a couple of years ago. I think that can be Nick Cross this year. He's really athletic, is able to cover sideline to sideline, has a lot of man coverage ability too, which is so valuable at the safety position. I really like Nick Cross.
Yeah, a few, last other names to throw out there. Another running back, James Cook, for the Buffalo Bills, who in my opinion, don't have a really strong running back room. I think James Cook is probably the best out of all of them. Whether he gets the starting job right away, it might take a few weeks for him, but I think he's going to be really good in the passing game for the Bills as well. On that high-powered offense, who knows how many touchdowns that Bills offense scores this year. Maybe James Cook could get a few of them, but another guy that I think will make an impact early on in his rookie season.
Yeah, I think that Devin Singletary could stay the starter throughout the year, but that could still mean that James Cook gets 1,000 yards, combining rushing and receiving, because I think he's going to be such a weapon on 3rd down. And we haven't really seen this Bills offense get to have a running back that is elite at pass catching. And I'm really excited to see how they're going to utilize him in that way. I think they're going to take full advantage of his skill set, and he's going to have maybe even like upwards of 500 receiving yards. I would not be surprised. James Cook is a really special weapon out of the backfield.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Lions situation before they drafted DeAndre Swift, how they didn't have a good running back at all. But all of a sudden they took Swift in the 2nd round. And, he's a really good running back for them. I think James Cook could be in a similar situation.
Yeah. I'll give you one last name, and this also be kind of related to the depth charts having been released for much of the NFL teams ahead of week one. That is Roger McCreary, who was actually named the starting cornerback on one side of the field instead of Caleb Farley, which is really notable because, Farley was a first round pick. We had really high hopes for him, but it looks like injuries have really derailed his career. But I don't want to take that credit away from Roger McCreary because he's a guy that I thought was really underrated in the pre-draft process. I was happy to see him go as high as he did in one of the first few picks of the second round. I think pick 35, because even though he, actually has sub 30-inch arms, which is considered under the threshold, he's just a really good cornerback. You turn on the tape, you don't see that lack of length affecting him. He's really technically sound, so he knows how to get around it. He's athletic. He's got solid size. He's got good strength. I'm not surprised that he's already a starter week one as a rookie because he is so pro ready and has such good technique.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. He was a guy that, fell out of the first round, like you mentioned, because of those arms, but definitely had first round or borderline first round talent. And, he went high second. And like you mentioned, being named a starter day one is really big for him.
Yeah. On
Now
the topic, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to move on. So if you have something else to say.
Now, I was going to say on the topic of the depth charts releasing, I saw that Chris Olave has been listed at the wide receiver 5 on the Saints official depth chart. What do you think about that? Because that came as quite a surprise for me. I mean, we weren't the biggest Chris Olave fans, but I still had a high second round grade on him, and I thought he'd beat out Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith for that wide receivers 3 job.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually he will beat them out. Obviously, like you mentioned, we didn't have round one grades on Chris Olave, and I think it just could be a transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming from Ohio State, everything was kind of tailored towards that passing offense. Olave was there for years, and we see it sometimes with wide receivers. They have a difficult, maybe first half of their rookie season transitioning. Jamar Chase seemed like he was going to have a difficult transition throughout the preseason with his drops, and then obviously he jumped off the tape from game one on the regular season. So I'm not really too concerned about that. Obviously, I was surprised to see him as wide receiver 5, but I'd expect him to break his way into the wide receiver 3 position at least. Halfway through his rookie season, I think he's still a really talented player. He's got that great deep speed, so I think it just could be a longer transition than some of us might have been expecting for Chris Olave.
Yeah, I think that's a good take there. Another thing that I noticed looking through these depth charts was that the Packers listed Romeo Doubs, the 4th round wide receiver from Nevada, at number 4 on the depth chart, and then their second round pick, Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, as the wide receiver 5. And that's really notable because Watson is a guy who I think they traded 2 second round picks to get him at pick 34, whereas Romeo Doubs was pick 128 at the tail end of the 4th round. So for him to be listed above Watson on that depth chart means he has had a really impressive offseason. It might also mean that, Watson he's got great traits, but, as more of a raw player coming out of the FCS, he's facing a bigger adjustment maybe than people would have realized. But I think that really means that Doubs has been performing, and he's someone that we have loved for such a long time. We were scouting Carson Strong, I think December 2020, thinking he might declare the following spring for the NFL draft. And I remember texting you, wide receiver number, whatever he was at the time on Nevada, this is a real NFL prospect. He's got size, speed, big playability. And I think Romeo Doubs in a Packers wide receiver room that is pretty open and has, some veterans that are experienced, but they might not have the same playmaking ability as Doubs. He could get on the field and make some plays pretty early this season, honestly.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, Watson had, was raw coming out. He probably has a large transition coming from the FCS level. I also thought that he had a few drops that were unnecessary on tape. But how much of this do you think comes down to Rodgers saying, I trust Doubs more than Watson at the moment? Because we know what Rodgers is picky about his receivers. I'm sure he had some say in this depth chart. So do you think Rodgers trusts – do you think the depth chart says that Rodgers trusts Doubs over Watson?
I think it does, honestly. Rodgers has a lot of control, more than most quarterbacks, even some of the big names. I think that, especially with these young wide receivers, he has a good amount of authority. And, if he trusts Dubs over Watson because of what he's seen in the preseason, I think that's why that's the case. And I think we should highlight a couple other day three guys who could make an impact, because it's pretty rare for that to happen. But every year there's a few guys. For example, Elijah Mitchell last year as a sixth round rookie, he had a really good season as the 49ers starting running back. I think that two on the opposite side of the ball, one guy is Zamir White, who as the Raiders backup running back, I think could really take chunks of carries away from Josh Jacobs as the year goes on, because he's such a good pure runner. And also Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver for the Bills. They lost Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. I think that Shakir is kind of similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if you're looking for, that type of repeat player coming out of day three at the wide receiver position, I would say that keep an eye out on Khalil Shakir, especially as the season goes on. He could have a second half of the year breakout like St. Brown.
Yeah. Talking on the Lions, I think Malcolm Rodriguez, the linebacker, I wasn't super high on him coming out in the draft, but his play has shown on the field in the preseason. He's really been a dominant force at linebacker for the Lions, and he's another day three guy that I think could make an impact in his rookie season.
Absolutely. And I want to give a shout to one of the guys we interviewed, Montreal Washington, who was, a small school guy from Samford, but he got drafted in the 5th round, which he fully deserved, because you turn on that game he played against Florida, where he absolutely dominated them for 3 touchdowns, and you could see the big play potential he had in the NFL. And I think the way he could be making some highlight reels this season is with his return ability. He's been named the kick return and punt return starter for the Broncos. Don't be surprised if he takes one to the house. He really has that type of ability.
Yeah, I mean, he's dynamic on tape. I think now we can move on to some rookies that might disappoint a little bit compared to what people are expecting. So I'll let you start off with a couple of those.
Yeah, I don't want to bash anyone too hard, but I think a lot of this is situational. For example, Tyron Smith got hurt at left tackle for the Cowboys, and so it looks like, despite signing Jason Peters, they just signed him. Their week 1 games in a few days. They might have to put out their first round rookie Tyler Smith at left tackle against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and reigning sack leader in the league, Shaq Barrett. And I think that's a really tough matchup for Tyler Smith. He's a really athletic and strong guy, but I had a really low grade on him comparatively to how other people saw him. I had a 4th round grade on him because I thought he was really raw technically, and he resorts to grabbing way too much. He had a lot of holding penalties, and it's tough to see him being able to adjust that quickly, especially with a high stakes Sunday night football game against the Bucks, where I'm afraid he might be getting exposed a little bit.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And Jason Peters was signed to the practice squad initially, so he probably won't be on the Cowboys active roster for at least, I think I saw 2 weeks minimum. So Tyler Smith might have a difficult start to the season. I think another player that's worth mentioning, Quay Walker, the linebacker for the Packers. I think this was just a situation of him being overdrafted, and he was the first linebacker off the board, correct?
Yeah.
So I think there'll be a number of linebackers that will outperform him, specifically Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, we already mentioned. So not that he's going to be a bad player his rookie year, but I just think he won't live up to that first round expectation. I thought he was taken a little bit too high for my likings.
Yeah, I saw Walker is currently number 3 in Defensive Rookie of the Year odds, and I think people just have the wrong idea of Walker. They saw Parsons last year have an amazing year, and now that they're thinking first linebacker off the board, Walker's going to be really good, but he's not really a playmaker from the position. You saw him at Georgia just kind of do his job, which he does well. I don't think he's not going to be a liability. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I don't see too much ability and coverage, to make a play by getting an interception. I don't see too much pass rush ability right now. I think he's just going to be fitting in. So people who are expecting him to be a star, I think, will be a bit disappointed.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Any more first round rookies that you think are going to disappoint?
No, not anyone else. And I think we can really move on to our exciting last segment, which is when will the rookie quarterbacks play? It was a heavily scrutinized class. Only one guy went in the first round. So let's start with him. Kenny Pickett is not the starter week 1 for the Steelers. That's Mitch Trubisky. What do you think that Pickett takes over at some point this year, and when do you think that is?
I think he has to. Unless the Steelers are 7-1 with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, I think he has to. He was a first round quarterback. Pittsburgh fans already love him because he's obviously from Pittsburgh. He played at Pitt. So I think he has to start at some point. Looking at their schedule right now, I can't see him starting against the Steelers. I mean, against the Bengals in week 1. I don't think they start him against the Patriots in week 2 or the Browns in week 3. I think the Jets in week 4 could be a possibility if the Steelers aren't playing well or Mitch Trubisky isn't playing well. If Trubisky is playing, decent, I think maybe the Saints in November after their bye could be an option as well. I think it really comes down to how well Mitch Trubisky plays, but I do think Pickett will play at some point during the season and will eventually get the starting job.
I agree. It's really tough to get a good gauge on when that will be, though, because it's hard to see them switching to Pickett if they're really still in the playoff picture. But at the same time, I don't know if Mitch Trubisky is going to play well enough to keep that job, 14, 15 weeks, because I still think the Steelers are going to be in the hunt for, almost the whole season. I think in week 15, they could still mathematically have a shot at the playoffs. And I mean, it's totally possible they do make them. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is pretty early on, and they realize, to stay in that playoff picture, to increase our chances of making it, maybe we do switch to Pickett because he is a talented guy. He's got good accuracy. He's more pro ready than some of these other guys who have come out in recent years. I think that if he were to play, he'd have a better rookie year than say a Justin Fields. It wouldn't be great. I think in terms of the general NFL landscape at quarterback, it'd be subpar because he's a rookie, and there are a couple things that I think he needed to work on heading into the league. But it might be we'll see how Trubisky plays. I think he deserves this second shot, and he's definitely getting it. But I'm not sold that he's going to last deep into the season and hold off Pickett that whole time.
Yeah, I mentioned the Jets game earlier, but after the Jets, they have Bills, Bucks back to back. So it might be hard to start him early just because of the talent of defense that the Steelers will be playing early on in the season.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to throw him into the fire like that.
Exactly. Let's move on to the second quarterback drafted now, all the way in the 3rd round, Desmond Ridder, the quarterback for the Falcons. Do you think Ridder plays this season? And if you do you think he plays early? What do you think about Ridder?
I don't think Ridder plays. I think Mariota gets a full year here. They're going to be, out of playoff contention pretty quickly, but I think that Ridder won't be ready yet, and they're going to know that it's in his best interest to sit through the whole year. I thought he was a pretty raw prospect who really needs to fix his mechanics and his accuracy, and I just don't think he's ready for NFL action in year 1.
I do think he's going to play. I think they'll play him either the last game of the season or the last 2 games of the season. I think they won't be a great team, like you mentioned, out of the playoff picture early. Give Mariota his time, but if they're really bad, I think they would want to see what they have in Ridder because they could potentially take a quarterback, early on, early in the draft next season.
Yeah, I think that they know it wouldn't be fair to judge what they have in him on a 2-game stretch at the end of his rookie season when he's really not ready yet.
I understand. I get that, but also if they're thinking about picking a quarterback, they have to see what they have in Ridder. Because
that is fair.
They did take him in the 3rd round. There's potential that they had to have seen potential in him to take him. So I think at some point he's going to play unless Mariota, knocks the wheels off and they're in playoff contention down the road. But I don't think that happens. I don't think they're talented enough of a team for that.
Yeah, I think that's not even really on Mariota. I think the team as a whole is one of the bottom 5 rosters in the league. Now, how about Malik Willis? Do you think that there's a way that Malik Willis gets on the field ahead of Ryan Tannehill this season?
I mean, if Tannehill gets injured.
Yeah, but barring injuries.
I just don't see it because I feel like it's so hard because I think the Titans are a talented team.
Mm-hmm.
if Tannehill falters, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think the last playoff game kind of hurts Tannehill's appearance as a quarterback a little bit. He's not often a quarterback that I believe will lose you games. I don't
Mhm.
think he's going to win you a ton of games. I think he's fairly safe with the football. I know the last playoff game happened against the Bengals, but other than that, most of the season he was really safe. Wasn't losing the Titans games. Obviously, they got the 1 seed. Um, I just find it hard to pull Tannehill because I don't think he's really going to do anything that's going to make the coaches say we have to get him out.
I think that if Malik Willis shows that he is ready to play well, the switch will happen. I just don't think that'll be the case. I think Willis is also pretty raw. I mean, really raw, honestly. And so he just won't be ready. But I think the Titans have spent much of this last spring, watching that game against the Bengals, and it must be so frustrating as a head coach if you're Mike Vrabel for your team to have sacked, and your defense, because he's a defensive coach, to have sacked the quarterback 9 times, and your starting quarterback honestly cost you the game. I think that one game, as much as it was a bad look, and you want to say that one game shouldn't cost him too much, I really think Mike Vrabel has to be frustrated with that game and with Tannehill's performance to the point where he is thinking of moving on from him, especially because Tannehill's not a young guy, which is why they drafted Willis. I just don't think Willis will be ready to start, and I don't think it would be a good decision for them to switch from Tannehill to Willis.
I do think Willis is the quarterback of the future for the Titans, though. I had a first round grade on him. I think he's a really talented player. I think he has true potential as a franchise quarterback. If they were to put him in, I think they would put him in early December against the Jaguars because their last 5 games, Jaguars, Chargers, Texans, Cowboys, Jaguars. I think that if they were to make the move, maybe they're borderline playoff contention, not as good of a team as they were last year. I think look early December. Again, Jaguars, Chargers, Texans, Cowboys, Jaguars. Not great teams or great defenses. So if they are looking to start Willis and he's ready, that would be where I think they put him.
Yeah, I think him being ready is such a big if. I feel like you're almost renouncing to the playoffs if you're doing that, and I think they're going to be a playoff team. They're certainly going to be in the hunt. 5 games to go. I don't think they make that decision. It's hard for me to see that happening unless Willis has really taken major strides this offseason.
Yeah, I mean I'd agree with you. I think if he was ready, that is where I think he'd get put in. But I think he's the quarterback of the future for the Titans, whether that's the end of this year, but maybe as soon as next year, he might be ready. The last 2 quarterback names that are worth mentioning, Bailey Zappi, I think we both agree he's not starting this year, barring injury. But Sam Howell's a little bit of an interesting conversation. Do you think he starts at any point this season?
No, I think really anyone outside of Kenny Pickett is only going to play if there's an injury. I said that Ritter and Willis are highly unlikely to play, and anyone else, including Howell, is even more unlikely. It's hard to see Howell outperforming Wentz to the point where he plays as a rookie, even especially as being a 5th-round pick. What do you think, though?
Yeah, I agree. Pretty much, other than injury or Carson Wentz playing horribly, it might be a situation where, if Carson Wentz plays really bad and Washington's in a top 5 pick contention, they put Howell in because we're done with Wentz. Hey, Howell was a guy that was regarded as a possible first overall pick 2 years ago. Maybe we see what we have. But yeah, I don't really see him playing. He is 3rd on the depth chart as well behind Taylor Heineke. So I don't really see that happening for Sam Howell.
Yeah. Well, it's really fun to follow these rookies. I think it's an important part of the scouting process because you see a lot of other, platforms follow them until the draft, grade the drafts, and then, already start moving on to the next class, which we've been doing. But it's really important to see how they play as rookies because it's so interesting to see who gets to shine so quickly in their NFL career. It's really impressive to have a great rookie year. And make sure to stay tuned for our weekly Rookie of the Week posts, because especially on the defensive side, I think a lot of those performances go under the radar. So we'll be picking them out for you every week. We'll be posting them on our Instagrams, and I know you guys enjoy them. We usually get good feedback on them, so stay tuned for those. They'll be happening every Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I enjoy making those. I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's fun, especially when there's a rookie that's not a big name guy who just flashes one week.
yep.
Those are really fun to figure out and write up. So yeah, be sure to stay tuned for those. And we'll be uh, keeping you posted with rookie stuff. Slowly trickling away from draft content a little bit, just because we're getting into the season. But again, a lot of stuff talking about the 2022 rookies. And the season starts Thursday, so that should be fun. Bills, Rams. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with another episode soon.